In the early hours of November 24th, 2025, a major shift happened that could change the financial outlook for millions of Americans. At exactly 4:38 a.m., President Donald Trump and top economic officials doubled down on the plan to issue $2,000 tariff dividend checks. And this time, their statements were clearer and more forceful than anything we've heard in months. The U.S. Commerce Secretary confirmed that not only is a standalone $2,000 payment program being actively prepared, but the White House is now exploring whether these checks can be sent without Congress, using existing tariff authorities and emergency economic tools. This is a massive development because up until now, both political gridlock and legal uncertainty created a cloud of doubt. But the president's early morning remarks, Treasury revenue reports, and newly released interviews indicate that the administration is treating this as a priority program, not a campaign promise. Even more surprising is how this development has split Washington in unexpected ways. Some Democrats are now supporting the checks, while several Republicans are opposing them, reversing the roles we saw during previous stimulus debates. This unique political moment has set the stage for urgent questions. Will the Supreme Court approve Trump's use of emergency tariff authority? What happens if the court blocks him? Is there enough tariff revenue to pay for these checks? Who will qualify? And perhaps the most important question, when could Americans actually receive deposits? For now, what matters is that these updates are not rumors. They come from official statements, Treasury revenue data, and high-level interviews, making this one of the most significant overnight updates since the Liberation Day tariffs were announced. The central argument from the White House is that tariff revenue has reached historic levels, and Americans should receive a share of that income. The Treasury Department confirmed that tariff collections jumped from $23.9 billion in May 2025 to $28 billion in June, then to $29 billion in July, reflecting a clear upward trend under the new tariff regime. By the end of fiscal year 2025 on September 30th, the federal government had collected $215.2 billion in tariffs. And just since the start of fiscal year 2026 on October 1st, the United States already collected about $40 billion. The administration believes that as foreign companies run out of stockpiled inventory, which they initially purchased in bulk to temporarily avoid tariffs, the amount of money flowing into the Treasury will increase even more sharply. President Trump's message is that tariffs are not taxes on Americans, but tools of national strength, designed to reduce foreign dependence and reward American households. As part of this argument, he describes the $2,000 checks as a tariff dividend, meaning a distribution of money that came from foreign importers, not from the U.S. taxpayer. The president stated that these checks will be reserved for moderate-income Americans, not wealthy individuals, and will likely arrive around mid-2026. Additionally, Trump has said that any leftover tariff revenue could help pay down the national debt, which now sits at $38 trillion. The White House believes the checks are both financially justified and strategically important to show Americans how tariff policy directly benefits them. A major piece of this puzzle is the Supreme Court case reviewing whether Trump legally used the International Emergency Economic Powers Act, IEEPA, to impose broad tariffs without congressional approval. According to finance executive Howard Lutnick, who personally attended the oral arguments, the justices appeared open to the administration's legal interpretation. Lutnick stated publicly that he expects the court to side with Trump, clearing the legal pathway for tariff checks. If the court rules in Trump's favor, the administration could use this emergency authority to continue collecting tariffs at current rates and potentially issue one-time payments using the same legal foundation. The stakes of this decision are tremendous. If the Supreme Court agrees with the administration, the White House will have broad power to distribute tariff-funded payments with minimal congressional involvement. If the court blocks the authority, however, Trump must rely on narrower trade laws such as Section 232, Section 301, and Section 338, which allow for tariffs under national security and unfair trade practice arguments. While these tools are still powerful, they offer less flexibility and may require more legal justification. Regardless of the outcome, the court's ruling will determine the timeline, the method, and possibly the size of the $2,000 checks. This makes the case one of the most consequential economic decisions facing the court in 2025 to 2026. The White House is not leaving anything to chance. Bloomberg reported that the Commerce Department and the Office of the U.S. Trade Representative have already drafted multiple backup plans in case the Supreme Court restricts Trump's emergency tariff authority. One alternative involves using narrower tariff categories tied to national security, which do not require broad presidential authority. Another option involves restructuring tariff revenue as a specialized National Economic Protection Fund, which could then distribute money to households under existing executive powers. While these backup mechanisms may face their own legal battles, they demonstrate that the administration is preparing to move forward under any scenario. The White House has also shown its willingness to act quickly on economic issues without Congress. Recently, Trump reduced tariffs on Brazilian beef, tomatoes, bananas, and coffee to ease food prices, especially after Democratic electoral wins in states where affordability concerns were a top priority. Additionally, the administration is launching a direct-to-consumer prescription drug purchasing system on January 26th, bypassing insurance companies entirely. These actions reveal a larger pattern. When Congress is gridlocked, the administration turns to unilateral action. This is why insiders believe that even if the Supreme Court restricts one pathway, the White House may still find another to deliver the $2,000 dividends. What makes this moment so unusual is the political realignment happening around the $2,000 checks. Several Democrats, including Andrew Yang, are openly supporting Trump's proposal, arguing that the money goes directly to working-class Americans rather than health insurance companies or bureaucratic programs. On the other hand, many Republicans, typically supportive of tax cuts and rebates, are now opposing the plan. Senator Ron Johnson warned that the country faces a projected $1.8 trillion deficit in 2025, making a new $600 billion program unaffordable. The Committee for a Responsible Federal Budget also estimates that sending $2,000 checks to all moderate-income Americans once per year would cost $6 trillion over 10 years. The tension centers on one question: are tariffs enough to pay for the program? Treasury estimates show tariff revenue could reach $300 billion per year under current conditions, only about half of what a full nationwide payment round would require. While Trump argues that the payments could be one-time or occasional rather than annual, fiscal conservatives worry that any new payments create expectations for future spending. This conflict explains why the White House is investigating whether it can bypass Congress entirely. If lawmakers continue to oppose the plan, the administration may attempt to use alternative tariff authorities to send the checks directly. One of the biggest questions Americans have is, who will qualify for these checks? While final rules are still being drafted, the administration has consistently stated that payments will be limited to moderate-income Americans. Early discussions suggest income caps may resemble the thresholds used for pandemic stimulus checks, but slightly lower to prevent the program from ballooning in cost. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent reiterated that the checks will go only to those who need the money, implying clear income-based eligibility. Inflation concerns are minimal because the U.S. Trade Representative stated that a single one-time payment is unlikely to influence long-term price levels. As for the timeline, President Trump repeatedly referenced mid-2026 as the target window. However, if the Supreme Court ruling comes quickly and Congress cooperates, checks may be issued earlier. If Congress blocks the plan and the White House is forced to rely on backup authorities, there could be delays or modifications. But the administration maintains that checks will be delivered. Viewers should stay tuned to the evolving legal and political situation because the next 60 to 90 days will determine the entire path ahead. Major decisions are coming, and Social Security Post will continue providing verified daily updates as they unfold. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next video.